know? And here we go with round one. Did you know?
COVID vaccine is free and easy to get. You don't need insurance or an appointment to get your vaccine. Vaccines are available at many locations near you.
And now we're going to double the value. Did you know?
The COVID-19 vaccine is always free of cost. You can visit pharmacies, community health centers, and other health providers in your neighborhood.
And now for the lightning round. Did you know?
The Delta variant of COVID is a mutation that has health experts worried because it's twice as contagious.
Then for our finale. Did you know?
The best way to protect yourself from the COVID Delta variant is to get fully vaccinated. Get your vaccine today.
Find out more at kingcounty.gov/vaccine. Did you know?
Women are not an homogenous group.
We face discrimination differently depending on factors such as ethnicity, age, socioeconomic status, and more.
Rainier Avenue Radio is proud to amplify women's voices.
They are the experts of their own lives, initiating conversations within their community about challenges they face, the solutions they're working on, and the opportunities they see.
Please join us this Sunday from 2 to 5 for Women's Voices on Air. We know our challenges. We are the experts of our lives.
We are master multitaskers, prioritizing our family, friends, and our faith above our own needs.
Our needs and voices are too often overlooked.
Please join us this Sunday from 2 to 5 p.m. for Women's Voices on Air.
We tell our stories in our own way.
Rainier Avenue Radio presents
The Community Election Connection Debate.
Powered by
Converge
Media.
Powered by
The South Seattle Emerald.
Rainier Avenue Radio will be hosting a series of debates. You'll hear from both candidates. You'll hear pro and con voices. We are requesting your participation. Rainier Avenue Radio presents the opportunity for you to hear directly from candidates
about issues and concerns related
to your interests. Rainier Avenue Radio provides an opportunity for the candidates to secure your vote.
It's your vote.
And your vote matters.
What's important to you?
These debates will cover a combination of topics in response to issues deemed important by our communities and specific issues that impact South Seattle residents.
You have the opportunity to submit questions
for the moderators.
Moderators will include Rainier Avenue Radio on-air personalities,
community members, people just like you, business leaders, local media, and local journalists. Watch live on RainierAvenueRadio.world.
Would you like to see when your favorite Rainier Avenue Radio show comes on? Check out our show schedule, updated weekly at RainierAvenueRadio.world.
Welcome to Rainier Avenue Radio.world. Happy Friday. It's me, Tony B. I am your host of the impacts of the coronavirus on South Seattle and surrounding communities. We started doing this on March 13th, I believe, of 2020. First Friday that, which happened to be Friday the 13th, I believe, that things started getting shut down. Here we are, 2021, almost 2022. And having said that, that's why we've done over 200 shows on the impacts of the coronavirus on South Seattle specifically. That's how we get down. It's Rainier Avenue Radio and surrounding communities. We found out very quickly that with the diverse community that we have in South Seattle, that other communities were experiencing similar things: the lack of access, the lack of resources, and most of all, I think initially the isolation, where people didn't know what was going on with each other. The normal channels of communication in person, which were shut down. People couldn't go anywhere. And so what I mean by that is if hey, you saw your friends and you got your information from social clubs, it wasn't happening anymore. If you got your information and exchanged information and it was being part of a religious gathering, or couldn't do that anymore. If you went out to nightclubs and that's where you chopped it up with your friends, and you got your information, couldn't do that anymore. And a lot of people weren't ready for the internet, and communication became a very big deal, and it was important at that point to make sure that our communities were connected and understood that even though you may be going through this in isolation, there are other people experiencing some of the same things. We've got another phenomenal show for you about the impacts of the coronavirus on South Seattle and surrounding communities. Coming up at 2 o'clock, Benton Hines will be joining us to talk about abolition, anti-racist work. Essentially, this is one white man's journey from privilege to anti-racism and being an abolitionist. I think you're really going to enjoy. Everybody has a story. Everybody's walk is different. But I think that you are, wherever you sit on this issue, I think that you will enjoy hearing Benton. Actually, first name is my last name, but I think that you will enjoy hearing the story about how he started out and where he's ending up. Again, that'll be at 2 o'clock. One white man's journey from privilege to anti-racist work and becoming an abolitionist. At 1:30, we're going to be talking to Lawanda Hassan Array about Seattle Relief. If you don't know about Seattle Relief, there is probably $1,000 to $3,000 out there waiting for you. I think it's $16 million. I don't remember exactly. We'll find out when Lawanda joins us. And this is for families in Seattle. And so we'll get more information on that. But right now, I want to talk to you about something called Seattle Promise. Seattle Promise is the college tuition and sports program that was launched by the city of Seattle, Seattle colleges and Seattle public schools following passage of the Families Education Preschool and Promise Levy in 2018. So it's fairly new. Seattle Promise basically has three core components. Tuition at 3 Seattle colleges. Free. South Central and North Seattle colleges. Equity scholarships, which provide flexible funding to students for books, transportation, housing, and other student needs. And I don't want to call that a hidden cost, but you think about the cost of tuition, and then you add on all of the other things that are necessary. And the third component is student supports and advising beginning in junior year of high school and lasting through completion of the degree, certificate, credential, or transfer to a 4-year institution. I kind of went through that really quickly. We're going to have some time to really get into the details of what Seattle Promise is. So if you've been thinking, how can I ensure that my child has the opportunity, or the guardian has the opportunity to go to college and get further their higher education? That might be you. You might be saying to yourself, you know what, the resources aren't available. I don't know how this is going to happen. And I know that a lot of the folks that I'm talking to in that regard right now are in school, but you can watch this at any time. So here's your opportunity to go back and review and find out more about Seattle Promise and how you can get guidance and funding to go to 3 Seattle colleges, South Central and North Seattle community colleges. We'll find out more about this. I'd like to initially welcome, I'm going to bring, I think I'll bring everybody on, and I'll start with Mr. Dwayne Chappelle. Dwayne, how are you, my man?
I am doing great. Good to be here today. How are you?
Under the circumstances, fantastic. Under the circumstances. Good to have you here. Also, I'd like to, and I'm going to talk a little bit about everybody, but I'm just going to get everybody on here. And Andrew, I want to make sure I'm saying your last name correctly. Is it Svek?
Yes, Svek. That's correct.
Svek. Thank you. And Francisco Ramos. Francisco, how you doing?
I'm good. Thanks for having me today.
All right. Well, thank you all for coming here to talk about Seattle's Promise. 2018 is when this all started, and in 2020 we had a pandemic. And so in addition to finding out more about Seattle Promise, I certainly want to find out how this has impacted the work. Has it changed The work, of course, we know that we had to figure a lot of things out. The safety net that we thought was there wasn't there. And the systemic oppression that for some of us we knew was there, everybody found out was there, whether they choose to acknowledge it or not. So we're going to talk about Seattle Promise, but I'm going to share a little bit of information on you. And because we're Rainier Avenue Radio and because we're South Seattle, I have to give some love to Rainier Beach's former principal, member of our South Seattle community, graduate of Grambling, and makes his home in South Seattle, Dr. Dwayne Chappelle, my man, 50 grand. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing well, and I just want to thank you for just giving us this platform today. The work that you're doing to highlight the scholars, like we see Brother Ramos right here, and just giving us this opportunity to be on your show and just letting folks know just the great work that we're doing. And I know you hadn't asked me anything, but I just want to just make sure that the listeners and you know just how important college is right now. I mean, we have all these amazing living wage jobs here that require some type of post-secondary degree. And we want to make sure that our youth, such as Mr. Ramos, have the education, have the resources and support that they need to basically to participate in our city's vibrant economy. So I'm super excited to share that. And I know you want to know a little bit more about Seattle Promise. And what Seattle Promise does is it really provides more students, especially our young students of color, with pathways to college, mentorship, and support so that they can succeed in making sure that they obtain some type of post-secondary credential. And when I say post-secondary credential, I'm talking about from a degree to a certificate or anything that's going to allow our scholars to reach their full potential and experience good health and prosperity and just move our economy forward. So I'll pause there because I know I can keep going.
This show will be hosted by Mr. Dwayne Chappelle. No, that's exactly what we want to hear from you. Who's eligible? Who's eligible for Seattle's Promise?
So Seattle Promise, every student in Seattle right now, in Seattle's public schools, so there are 17 high schools, and each student that graduates will have an opportunity to participate, and they're eligible for the Seattle Promise.
Every student in Seattle?
In Seattle public schools.
Seattle
yes.
public schools.
Yes.
Okay. Let's start with this, and I'm going to move on. But the first thing is, what is the first thing that a student or a parent should know in order to say, okay, I'm interested in this. I want to begin to start the process of taking advantage of this opportunity. Where do you start?
Well, you start with connecting with, and Mr. Civet is here. You start with connecting with the individual that are at the schools that are there helping supporting our seniors, our scholars in 17 high schools in Seattle, and just having that conversation. You know, it's again, as you mentioned earlier, you didn't dive too deep into it. It's tuition scholarship. Is providing 2 free years of tuition-free education at the Seattle College campus. But you start in your school with the specialists that are there working with our scholars. And what I'll do is pause and I know your show, but maybe allow Mr. Ramos or Mr. Civic to share a little bit more.
I'm just the host, Mr. Chappelle. This is your show. All right.
Okay.
Y'all let us know what we need to know. I'm gonna just give folks again a little background on you, Mr. Chappelle. Seattle's first director of the Department of Education and Early Learning, and what was it, 25% increase in Rainier Beach High School when you became principal. Dr. Chappelle oversees the city's efforts to partner with families and communities and achieve educational equity, close race bias opportunity gaps, and build a better future for Seattle students through strategic investments in education. It's wonderful when the right person gets the job. So congratulations. So Andrew, I'm going to bring you on now, but this time I'm going to start a little bit. I'm not, before you get going, I'm going to give a little background on you, Andrew. Your career spans more than 25 years of work in communications, marketing, and public relations. You also have additional experience in college residential life, admissions, web content development, nonprofit arts organizations, social media, working with college-age students. That's a pretty diverse background. And from my perspective, I think that's what it requires when you're trying to transition students from high school to college, and open that door to a world of possibilities that are out there. At least from my perspective, it's not just this linear path. People grow up differently. People have different ambitions, and sure as heck change their minds about what they want to do. So let's talk about, again, the role that you play in Seattle Promise.
I've been working at Seattle Colleges now for 3 years as part of the district communications team, and so communications about Seattle Promise are part of my job. So I work with a number of folks at Seattle Colleges. We probably the best starting point, in addition to talking with the folks at the high schools, is simply going to the website, which is seattlecolleges.edu/promise. And that's a really good starting point if you want to learn a little bit more about the program and what it entails. But you're right, it's communicating about Seattle Promise is challenging in some ways because people don't necessarily know what it is. I think they've become more aware of it over the last 3 years, and with some of the interest in enrollment and the successes that we've had in bringing in students from the Seattle public schools. And I think just to let folks know that it is tuition and support. And that support part of it is a really important part of it. Student services, making sure that you're checking in with these students, having the students check in with you. It's interesting to note that between 35 and 40% of the students that are taking part in Seattle Promise are first-generation college students, and that means that their families, either their parents haven't attended college before or haven't graduated from a four-year college, or just don't have a lot of experience navigating the college microcosm, which can be complex in itself. So folks like Francisco Ramos, who I think you should talk with a bit more here, he's an outreach person, and he actually has a lot of work with students on a day-to-day basis. And he can kind of give you the perspective of working with students. But it's really important to know that roughly 60 to 63%, about 2/3 of our students are students of color. About 25% are from families with household incomes less than $25,000 a year. And actually about 2/3 are less than $75,000 a year. And in Seattle, $75,000 family income is not particularly high. And then finally, that we are really committed to diversity and inclusion and access. If you wanted to pick one word that was probably the most important word about Seattle Promise, it would be access.
All right, and again, a couple more questions. But I got to get everybody on first. I'm excited to give everybody. And Francisco, out of this group, last but definitely not least, you make direct connections. Francisco supports the high school seniors with Seattle Promise application, the Seattle Colleges enrollment process, submitting the FAFSA or the WASFA financial aid application. And those things. Those are monsters right there. And Andrew, you kind of alluded to the fact that and I hate to put it this way, but sometimes this thing could be like a minefield because it blows people up and they go, I can't even get through the application process, that doesn't mean that you won't be successful in college. I guarantee you that. But just again, if you don't have the familial experience of working through this application process and understanding, again, the nuances that are involved in here, it can be very difficult. So, Francisco, let's talk about the work that you do with Seattle Promise, the role that you play.
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, my name is Francisco Ramos. I work as an outreach specialist for Seattle Promise. So my job, even though I'm employed by Seattle colleges, is to primarily serve as a high school support person for Seattle public school seniors in applying for the Seattle Promise scholarship. So that includes every part of the application and onboarding process. So everything that a high school senior would need to do from day one, starting their enrollment process with the program all the way until they're sitting in class on their first day. That includes the Seattle College application, Seattle Promise application, like you just mentioned, completing a financial aid application, a FAFSA or a WASFA, helping support them at our 2 orientation events, and also completing their financial aid files. So getting the FAFSA or WASFA in is one thing, but then a lot of times the financial aid departments are prompted by different either state or federal government to have students submit other documents. And so helping them navigate what is this document that they're asking for, getting them ready with, helping them prepare to take their college or college math and English placement if they need it, and every other thing in between that they need to do to be ready to start college with Seattle Promise at Seattle colleges.
All right. Well, here we go. This becomes the Q&A part of this. And so it was good to hear from everyone about what you do and how you do it. When this started, I thought it was very ambitious and a wonderful opportunity. Then we got hit by COVID. And so I'm just curious where things are at right now, and how we're proceeding, and how you see the future of the program working, and what happened over this period of time. And I think if you don't know, this is how we get down. I just ask frank, open, honest questions. So let's start with this, Francisco. For you, as kind of a point of contact, what is the reception that you are getting from students? I don't know if you're talking to guardians and parents as well. This is a new program. What is the reception that you're getting when you introduce this opportunity?
Yeah, now going into our third, I would say my third application cycle. And when I started when the program expanded. So students a lot of times have heard about this, or their families, they're at least vaguely familiar a lot of the time now when I talk to them, but the reception is pretty open. I mean, throwing out the, of course, first line of free tuition is big, because who doesn't like to save thousands of dollars? But also, I think students get even more excited when they realize the other types of support they get. Of course, financial support is a big one, and that gets rid of a large barrier for students. But the individual support that students get, just having someone to help them through that application process, through all these different processes, and then once they're in college working and having a designated retention specialist that's really keeping up with them. I think students don't realize that at first, but the more that you engage with them, I think the reception becomes even greater, realizing those additional supports that they get, especially that human support.
And I'm gonna, I guess, initially open this question up to anyone to start with, but ultimately I'd like to hear from all three of you. How, the easiest way to say this is, how did the pandemic affect the work that you are doing with Seattle Promise? And because I could go on endlessly about the challenges the pandemic caused. It was virtual. Just starting with that, but so many other things took precedent at that time. There was social unrest, social upheaval. We'll just start with there. Just about how did the pandemic impact and affect Seattle Promise, and what started in 2018? As you're getting ready to launch this thing, and suddenly we get hit with the pandemic. Andrew, I'll just go to you first, and anyone else can chime in.
Sure. Of course, everything moved to remote operations, and so Zoom became like the tool of communications, and Francisco can talk a little bit more about the student interaction on that. But I'll give you one example that's staying with us even as we probably move forward to more of a mix of on campus and online. But last year they started some Seattle Promise workshops that they offered online, and they offered them in English with an additional language. So that worked so well that they are actually coming up this November. There are some additional workshops. These are online workshops hosted on Zoom, offered in English and one other language, such as Amharic, Spanish, Somali, Vietnamese, Cantonese. Those will be offered again starting November 2nd, and you can find out more about those on the website. But because those went over so well last year in the age of Zoom and Corona, they're continuing those kinds of things online again this year. And I'll let Francisco talk a little bit more about the student interaction.
Go ahead, Francisco.
Yeah. So the work definitely changed in, I guess, my approach in working with students, because when I had started my role, it was to be in a high school, you know the students, you're really interacting with them. I'm there weekly. And you're able to just, there's difference in assisting someone with a college application, like when you're right next to them and you're able to see the screen that they're looking at, versus remotely. I know you mentioned financial aid applications are hard, but FAFSAs and WASFAs online, especially in workshop settings where there's a lot of students, they can't really, those applications ask a lot of like personal and sensitive information. So it becomes a little bit trickier to navigate those situations. But we did, as Andrew said, we started offering multiple workshops to students and one-on-one appointments. So kind of using workshops as a more general, here's the 101 of what you'll need to do this and how you do it. And then also offering students those individual appointments to come and get the help that they need. Having translated workshops was a big success last year, both for the college and Promise application and for financial aid applications. Hosting those in the evenings, having them recorded so families can attend and supporters. Another thing we did too was making sure that our website was really up to date with all information and resources students could have. As we saw with COVID, it really shifted the world, and we saw a lot of our students start working or becoming breadwinners for their family, and they were not able to attend things in the normal business hours because they had other commitments. They're taking care of family, siblings, working. So making sure that we were recording all the workshops we were doing, we were making sure that all these PowerPoints, these different info flyers are available on our website. I frequently would have students that would start working on something, and at 12:30 at night next morning, I have an email from a student who was working on it, but they were able to find the resource online. And I think just really building out other components of our program that we did last year as well. One of my colleagues was working helping the program develop its family engagement piece. So having other areas for just other student supporters to be engaged, knowing that they're the ones who see their students the most. And so, yeah, it was different and it was a challenge, but we learned a lot of good things. We ended up enrolling our largest class this last fall, coming in, and what we've learned, I think will carry forward, continuing on those workshops, also offering hybrid supports. So offering those evening workshops for families or for students, and just continuing the great work.
Good that you got this kind of figured out. We're almost out of time. I think initially when I made the call, it was, well, is that going to be, too much time? No, we're out of time. And it seems like we just barely got started. So really quickly here, can you tell me geographically how this is working out in regards to who's participating in the program, who's applying? So I'm saying, are you getting the results you're looking for from South Seattle as opposed to North Seattle, as opposed to West Seattle or Central Seattle? Geographically, and I could say race, we just don't have a lot of time, but who's participating in this event, or are the levels at the levels that you would like them to be?
I think Andrew could probably give you a little bit about the geographically, but I can tell you specifically that, as you mentioned, the pandemic, yes, it was difficult on us, but it also goes to show that just how resilient our scholars are, and just the partnership, how this partnership has really been successful, because our scholars exceeded national graduation trends last year, and then during the pandemic, or should I say last year during the pandemic, Seattle Promise, they celebrated their largest enrollment in program history, which was 830 students. And this speaks to a little bit of your question, but with those 830 students in the fall, I know that 58% of them were BIPOC and 35% were first gen students, and which was a huge success for us because we know the pandemic was especially tough on students, which is why we made the adjustments to make sure that the scholars had opportunities to stay in school and continue to support them to graduate. And I'll say this, that we, and you mentioned it before, we being our city, we're super committed to expanding support for our Promise scholars. There's been some new announcement of like reentry policies, and we've been offering like expanded equity scholarships, and predominantly supports to our BIPOC students. There's also a new transfer pathway to the University of Washington. So I wanted to share that with you. Though I know you specifically was asking about geographic breakdown analysis, but I just definitely had to celebrate our brilliance of our Black and Indigenous students of color who are applying and completing to achieve their goals. So Promise is so racially and ethnically diverse. I think you would be extremely pleased if you had an opportunity to take a visit.
But that answers my question kind of. And I got about 30 seconds left. I'm actually going to end up being overtime. Quickly, if you can, Andrew, geographically, are you getting the results that you look? What are those? I don't know if you're even looking for geographically results, but can you tell us geographically who's taking advantage of this?
I don't have a good answer for that specifically geographically, but I can say that we're receiving students from all 17 public schools, and we have about 60% of our students are students of color, which means that the group of incoming scholars is more diverse than any of the high schools from which they graduated. So that's really good.
This is going to eliminate the time to get final words from everybody. I tried to give y'all space to say what you wanted to say. Mr. Chappelle, I'm going to give you about 30 seconds to finish this up with a final message that you would like for those who are listening right now.
Yeah, my final message to families, parents, and scholars, please take advantage of this opportunity. The resources are here for our scholars. We want to make sure that each and every one of our Seattle students can participate in this program. I also want folks to know, because we've talked a lot about BIPOC and race, that although race-based opportunity gaps in our city are persisting, we are doing a great job and working hard to meet our mission by closing race-based opportunity gaps. We're doing it from kindergarten readiness. We're doing it, as I just mentioned, in the Seattle Promise program and the participants, but we're also doing it by starting to build an early college-going culture that's going to have an impact on our college graduation for years to come. So parents, take advantage of this opportunity. Our young, bright, brilliant scholars need it.
All right, a little bit overtime, but I want to get the word out about this program so that everyone gets to take advantage of it. So Andrew and Francisco, Dwayne, thanks for joining me. We'll have to come back maybe and check in again, and clearly we can see that we can fill up 30 minutes on this issue, and I still don't think we even got to even some more issues about engaging the students and the parents, and I know that's what you want to do, in particular during a pandemic. Again, coming up a little bit later, we'll be talking to Benton Hines, who's going to share his story and his journey from one white male's perspective, from privilege again to anti-racist and abolitionist work. And then coming up next year, we'll be talking to Luanda Arai about Seattle Relief. Do you know what it is? Do you know why we're going to be talking about it? Could impact you. We'll be back right after this.
Here with the Rainier Avenue Radio Traffic Update. You can listen to us in your car 24/7 anytime by downloading the free TuneIn app. Once you do, search Rainier Avenue Radio. And remember, do not curse out your fellow drivers. This has been your Rainier Avenue Radio Traffic Update.
There is no secret why Downbeat Magazine calls this Seattle's most important annual jazz event. The 33rd Annual Earshot Jazz Festival hits Seattle stages October with one-of-a-kind live jazz performances and video live streams all the way through November 7th. This year's Earshot Jazz Festival features established masters like Diane Reed, Chuco Valdez, E. Daniel, and red-hot young stars like Theo Croker, Emmanuel Wilkins, and Samara Joy, celebrating both Seattle's history and its future in the world of jazz. Earshot teams up with community partners like Langston, the Royal Room, and Rainier Avenue Radio to showcase Seattle's own resident artists. Tickets and more information are available online at earshot.org. That's earshot.org. Once again, Seattle's most important annual jazz event, I believe. Earshot Jazz Festival, hitting stages early October all the way through November 7th. Call for more information.
We got the feeling now. Yeah.
R&B, soul, funk, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. We give you all that and more on Star Time. Join me, Paul Pearson, for a 2-hour trip through the history of R&B. A new episode every week on Wednesday at 2 p.m. Come and get the feeling on Star Time on Rainier Avenue Radio.world.
Listen up, y'all. It's a Halloween Day event. Are you wanting to participate in a trick-or-treat wonderland? Well, on Sunday, October 31st, 2 to 5 p.m., Champs Resource and Service Center and Urban Impact want to collaborate with you and many other partners, residents, volunteers, local businesses, churches, and organizations to host the 7th annual Boo Bash at the beach. Where? Well, the Rainier Beach Community Center is where, and there are many ways you can support, so visit rbboobash.org/support for more information. rbboobash.org/support for more information on the 7th annual Boo Bash at the beach.
Rainier Avenue Radio.world is your 24/7 digital media hub. Tune in at Rainier Avenue Radio.world. Also find us on Facebook, Twitter, and TuneIn apps.
Welcome back to Rainier Avenue Radio.world, your community radio station. It's me, Tony B., your host of the impacts of the coronavirus on South Seattle and surrounding communities. If you're just tuning in, you missed a wonderful discussion that probably could have went on for 90 minutes. We're talking about Seattle Promise. This is an opportunity for all Seattle Public High School students to get free tuition to 3 Seattle colleges, North, Central, South Seattle community colleges. So go back and check that out. Again, immediately following this next segment, we'll be talking to Ben Hines and his story of one white man's journey from privilege to anti-racist and abolitionist work. Ever heard of the Seattle Relief Fund? That's a rhetorical question. I know you can't really answer. But if you have not, you probably want to say, I'm going to watch this show and I'm going to call a few people up. This is for Seattle. Here's what it is. My guest will tell you more, and I'll bring her on shortly. The Seattle Relief Fund is $16 million of funding for direct cash assistance. $16 million of funding for direct cash assistance to Seattle's most vulnerable, low-income residents and their households who've been impacted by the COVID-19 crisis. I'd like to bring on our guest right now, and I want to make sure that I say the name correctly. And is Lawanda Hassan Arai? Did I get it right?
So close. Arai is the last name.
Arai. All right, we're going to see if we can turn your volume up a little bit, or maybe, I'm not sure. You know how technology works. It sounds a little quiet to me. We'll see if we can fix that. Lawanda, I'm going to give briefly told people what the Seattle Relief Fund is about, because I want you to do that, and then I'll ask you some questions, and for those who are eligible and can qualify, we want to get them this information out there, because that's what this is for. It's COVID relief. So Luanda was born in Rio de Janeiro. And your career has spanned the hospitality industry, including growing up working in your family's restaurants, housing, homelessness, workforce development, social enterprise, community and civic engagement, tech, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Kind of a Renaissance person, all over the place. In your free time, you enjoy exploring cities and staying on top of the local dining scene and music scene. Okay. Luanda, how are you doing?
I'm doing really well. Thanks so much for having me.
I gave a very, I don't know, maybe I just hit the nail on the Seattle Relief Fund. Please share with us what that is, as if we've never heard of it before, which means maybe going back to explain how it came into existence, for starters.
Absolutely. So I work for the Office of Immigrant and Refugee Affairs in the city of Seattle.
You know, Luanda, I'm going to stop you just for a second, because I don't think it's on our end, but I'm having a problem hearing you. And I know this is really important and critical information. And if there's something that we can do to make sure, folks, now I can't hear you at all. Nope, I can't. I don't know if you can hear me, but I can't hear you at all. So at least the other way, we had a little, and I think on our end, we probably had it cranked up all the way, huh? All right, so we'll see. Again, this is really important, so I want to make sure that we can hear you. No. Are you? It looks like you're there. Mike thing says you're. There we go.
How about now?
Okay, that's a little bit better. We'd still like to hear you, but we'll try with this. And I mean, I'm not worried about I don't know if there's a microphone that you can put it closer to your mouth that's on your headphones.
I can do it this way. Is that better?
That's better.
Okay.
Thank you. Again, I just want to make sure our audience hears what you have to say.
Absolutely.
So Seattle Relief Fund. Take us back to how it got started.
Okay. So I work for the Office of Immigrant and Refugee Affairs at the city of Seattle. And in the fall of 2020, we rolled out the Seattle Disaster Relief Fund, which was a cash assistance program for immigrants and refugees who had been left out of federal and other programs like stimulus checks and unemployment insurance. And we distributed about $8 million to about 3,700 households. And it was very well received by council and the mayor. And so in June of this year, as part of the Seattle Rescue Plan, they authorized additional funds and expanded the eligibility for who could qualify for cash assistance. I think it's clear to all of us that the recovery from both the public health and the economic impacts of COVID-19 have not been evenly spread out. Not everyone is recovering at the same rate. And we know that there's a great need in the community for people to really feel like they can cover their bills and really recover with the rest of the community. And so this round of funding is available for low-income residents in Seattle. So the income qualification is that you have to be at or below 50% of the area median income. And that's, a technical term that is very hard to give you a soundbite on.
That's kind of wonky. Is there an easier explanation?
Yeah, absolutely. So I can give you some examples. So for example, if you are a single person who lives by themselves and your total monthly household income is at or below $3,375, you are eligible. You're considered at or below 50% of area median income. So
Okay,
if you
let's repeat that one thing again to make sure
absolutely.
this is one of the qualifiers. One more again, hit me.
So if you are a household of one and you have a total monthly household income at or below $3,375, then you would qualify. And if you're a family of four and your income is at $4,821 a month, then you would qualify. We have a whole chart on the website that will help folks navigate to whether they qualify or not.
That certainly helps.
Yeah.
To get that. Okay, I'm sorry I interrupted you. Go ahead. I
Not
just
at
wanted
all.
to make sure because that's important, folks. 50% of the this or the that or the
Yeah, absolutely.
maybe it's just me, but thank you.
No, it's a complicated, complex term that is not easy to explain. So we have this chart on the website that folks can look at.
Not that we don't want to know how you figure this out because at the end of the day, that's how people are eligible for the. But right now, folks want to say, how do I get the money?
Right. And so I will quickly tell you some other eligibility criteria. So folks to be eligible have to be at least 18 years old, and they have to live within Seattle city limits. Okay. There are just a few exceptions to the Seattle city limits. So if you live outside of Seattle city limits, but you are a Promise Scholar, just how Dr. Chappelle was talking about previously on the show, if you are enrolled in that program and you live outside of Seattle, then you can also be eligible if you meet the income and the age requirement.
You know, that's what I mean, Luanda, when I say COVID impacted everything.
Right.
And so that's great to hear for those who are listening to our Seattle Promise show, that even if you live outside of Seattle, but you're participating in this program, you're still eligible.
That's right.
All right. Again, I want you to keep going. I just said this is all great information, and I'm just, making sure that I'm redundant about it.
Of course.
So go ahead.
So the other exception to living within the Seattle city boundaries is if you or anyone in your household is currently enrolled in a Seattle public school. So for folks who live, outside, maybe in unincorporated King County or some other area just outside of Seattle, but they're children or the children that they care for are in their household are enrolled in Seattle public schools, they can also apply.
All right. Because as we know, it's become quite expensive to live in Seattle and people are getting pushed out, but still wanting their students to be in schools where they have shared identity and people that they know. And so one more time with that one too. If you live outside of the Seattle city limits, but have a student attending Seattle public school, you're good. Is that right?
That's right. Okay. And then the final exception to living within Seattle city limits is that if you're an artist or cultural worker who has workspace, so a studio or rehearsal space within Seattle, then you can also qualify.
All right. I'm going to start asking you more questions here, Luanda.
Please.
But before that, I want to give you the opportunity again, if there's something again that you want to say specifically about the Seattle Relief Fund. I'm glad we got eligibility off the top, for folks. And I'll just dive into questions. But if you, again, before we start that, anything you want to explain about the program before we get going?
I'll just give you the website. It's www.seattlerelief.com. And we'll repeat that, I'm sure, over and over again, but wanted to get that out right away as well.
So I mentioned before, $16 million was available. And we've discussed the eligibility. Do we know, or do you have information that you could say that's about this many people with the $16 million? Because initially $16 million sounds like a whole bunch of money. Mm-hmm. And maybe it is, but we know that there's a whole bunch of people out there who've been impacted and affected by COVID. So do you have any idea, okay, how did you come up with 16 million? Is it just the number that was there, or was that a process of saying we need to shoot for something?
That was determined by city council and the mayor as part of the Seattle Rescue Plan. As far as figuring out how many people that will end up serving, it's a tricky question to answer. So I'll give you the example from our Seattle Disaster Relief Fund for Immigrants. In the fall, it was about 37 households. Of course, it depends. We don't know. I can't tell you exactly how many people that is, but 37 households and about $8 million. So if we see a similar uptick of this fund, we think that we can serve more than 6,000 households with these dollars. And what's tricky about calculating that is that awards will be between $1,000 and $3,000. So each adult is eligible to receive $1,000. Each eligible adult can receive a payment of $1,000. And then households with children can receive a $3,000 payment. And households that are 2 adults could receive $2,000. And so, depending on the household size, that'll determine the award amount for those who are selected.
For a household where folks are, for whatever reason, cohabitating or multiple folks living there because they had to make ends meet. How do you define? Does that mean that one person in the household? Even, again, it's just their living situation.
Sure.
And so just trying to define what that means for everyone.
That's a great question. So we determine household depending on essentially how you file taxes. And so if you are a group of people living in the same household and all file taxes together, so the children are your dependents, or there's maybe an elderly person who is a dependent, that is considered, you'd have one person who files for everyone. If you are in a roommate situation or multiple families living under the same roof, then we would encourage each person or each family unit to submit their own application. So if you are, in a living situation where there are multiple people who have independent expenses and sort of operate independently, then they are encouraged to apply as their own, submit their own application, essentially.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I mean, we're trying to figure this out. I know y'all are trying to figure it out, and I think at the end of the day, everybody wants it to work, and so we'll just keep working our way through this. And time flies really quickly, so I got to move on with some additional questions, which I think are important. How do you apply? And I'm going to throw this one in there at the same time. What do you need to have? Because we know that can be a barrier.
Of course.
As well. How do you apply? What do you need to have with you when you're trying to do this?
So the application is online. It's at www.seattlerelief.com. And there is an apply button. There are blue apply buttons throughout the page. The page is also available in multiple languages. And so thank you for the visuals. And so once you click that button, you'll be asked to set up an account to submit your application, and that will just require your email address and a password that you make up. The reason we're asking folks to set up an account is because then you can save your application and return to it later. You don't have to do it all at once. In terms of documents that you need to submit, we also have a list on the website that shows you what you need to submit. We're trying to keep this as low barrier as possible. The maximum number of documents that you'd have to submit is 2. What we need to see is, there's the required documents. Awesome. And if we click this little plus sign, it'll show you over here on the right. Yeah, there we go. So we need to see that, we need folks to prove their identity and their connection to Seattle. So this is not a list of everything you need to submit. These are the options. So if you have a Washington State ID or driver's license that has your current Seattle address on it, that's all we need. If you have a ID from a different state that is current and shows that it's you, and one of your children goes to Seattle Public Schools, you could submit that ID and a document from the school verifying that you're, even though you live outside of Seattle, you have a child enrolled in Seattle Public Schools. So this list was really developed in partnership with community. We did feedback sessions with 44 different organizations, so that we could really provide a long list of options so that folks aren't chasing down a document that's hard to find. And so, sorry, were you going to ask?
Go ahead.
And so once you complete your application, it's as simple as taking a picture of those documents and uploading it within your application. And then the application closes on November 15th. So right now we're just accepting applications. It's not a first come, first serve process. Once the application closes, our partner who is managing all of that will review all the applications. It is, we're trying to serve the most vulnerable folks who apply. So there is a number of criteria that we'll be screening for, and the higher the vulnerability of an application, the more likely it is to receive funding.
You're listening to Rainier Avenue Radio.world. It's me, Tony B. This is our special impacts of the coronavirus on South Seattle and surrounding communities. My guest is Luanda Arai. We're talking about Seattle relief. $16 million that's available. I'm not holding you to this, but this could serve as many as 6,000 folks. Everywhere from $1 up to $3,000 if you qualify. We went over some of the eligibility. Here's the thing, Luana. It's always, how does the money get out? When is the money going to get out? Mm-hmm. When are you going to get the money? I've got bills happening right now, and you're asking me to go online and do all this stuff, and the radio station pulled up to the. What if I need some help?
Yeah,
I know that we're in a pandemic, and everybody's just not familiar with the internet and the way that it works. It can be frustrating, and we've been forced into this recently. But again, we're talking about people who may be eligible for something that can help them out of the crisis. Is there help available? Can you go somewhere in person? What can you do to get assistance to help navigate you through this process?
Another excellent question. Absolutely. So part of our process was including community-based organizations in our planning. And so we have contracts, the city has contracts with 46 community-based organizations throughout the city that are offering some level of support. And so again, on the website, there is an application assistance section that will give you phone numbers to those organizations that can help you fill out an application, whether it's because you need a document to verify something, or you don't have access to the internet, or you're not, you're running into some sort of trouble with filling out your application.
We are on top of it. There's some examples of places you can do right there.
Absolutely. And so it's a long list, and you can find those phone numbers. There's also a customer service number through the application process that you can call if you're having any technical issues. So with our previous experience, we know that a majority of people will complete the application on their own, but we know that there's still a large need for some assistance. And so we're leaning on community-based organizations that are in community and know community and have trust to help folks who need that little bit of extra help.
Luanda, thank you. And again, at the time, it seems like we just got started. And
right.
But I want to give you a minute or two so here for final words. Anything that you would like to share with our audiences about the Seattle Relief Fund?
I'm really excited to be a part of this program. I think, our goal is to have cash money in people's pockets before the end of the year. And so I just encourage anyone who's eligible to apply to help get the word out. We know that the need is great in our community, and I'll say again, the application closes on November 15th. If you don't apply until November 15th, you still have a shot. It's not a first come, first served process. And so I encourage everyone to apply and help get the word out.
And email address, website address is how you the website is where you apply.
That's correct.
And that website address is again
www.seattlerelief.com.
All right. I want to thank you again on short notice for coming in here and sharing what I think is critical information to our communities.
Thanks so much for having me.
You're listening to Rainier Avenue Radio .world, our special edition of the impacts of the coronavirus on South Seattle and surrounding communities. Coming up, we're going to have Benton Hines again. You talk about the impact of the coronavirus. This is one white man's journey from privilege to anti-racist abolitionist work. And wherever you sit on the fence of what's taking place, I think you're going to hear an interesting story. So tune in. We'll be back in a couple of minutes. We'll be joined by Benton Hines. If you, again, happen to be just tuning in, you just missed Lorana Arai talking about Seattle Relief and who can benefit from that, who's eligible. We tried to go over as much as we could in the time. And then also Seattle Promise. And ironically, Seattle Promise was connected to those things, like it's impacting everything. We'll be back right after this.
This is Paul Pearson, host of Star Time. And when I'm not explaining to my intern exactly what R&B is, I'm listening to Rainier Avenue Radio .world.
Wash your hands, don't touch your face, wipe things down, clean up your space. When you cough and sneeze, do responsibly. If you feel you're getting ill, isolate at home and chill. No, you're not alone. Please pick up your phone and call 206-477-3977. King County 206-477-3977. Public Health 206-477-3977. King County 206-477-3977. Public Health Community Radio Station will provide you with more information. Say Rainier Avenue Radio. Your community radio station will provide you with more information. Rainier Avenue Radio.
Different rules apply when it gets this late, you know what I mean? It's like after hours.
Whatever gets you through the night, it's all right.
Hello, I'm an unpaid spokesman for DJ Sotovaci. I'd like to invite you to listen to his free-form music show. It's popular music the way it was never intended to be heard. Whatever gets you through the night, late nights, here on Rainier Avenue Radio .world.
Whatever gets you through the night.
If you or a family member are 55 or over and need nursing home level care, but want to keep living where you are, check out Providence Elder Place PACE. This program offers healthcare, housing, transportation, and recreational activities. There are no copays or deductibles, and it's covered through Medicare and Medicaid. Providence Elder Place PACE works to keep you healthy and in your home. Call 206-320-5325 or visit providence.org Elder Place. Providence.org Elder Place.
Hi, I'm Mac McGregor, the host of the You Can Make a Difference show, which airs live every Friday at 12 noon PT time. On the You Can Make a Difference show, we shine a spotlight on people who are doing amazing things to make a positive difference in our communities and in our world. We talk about what inspired them to do the work and what inspires them to keep going, how they got their start, and how you can, if it inspires you, plug into their work. We can all do something that makes a difference. So tune in every Friday at noon to the You Can Make a Difference show with Mac McGregor.
November is American Indian Heritage Month, so please join Rainier Avenue Radio .world to celebrate all month long the history, the contributions, and the accomplishments of our first Americans. Again, please stay tuned to Rainier Avenue Radio.world to celebrate and honor American Indians during American Indian Heritage Month.
You're listening to Rainier Avenue Radio.world.
Metro League High School football is back.
Tackles off to the races. He could go all the way. He could go touchdown.
It's the return of Metro League High School football, Friday and Saturday nights on Rainier Avenue Radio.
Makes a stutter step inside, breaks a tackle. He's on the run. He's going to take it all the way. He's going to take it all the way on the sideline.
Exciting Metro League football live on Rainier Avenue Radio.world. It's back. All of us have struggled through the COVID-19 pandemic, and many of our communities have been particularly hard hit. Some things definitely need to change, but a few things should stay the same, like protecting your child from serious diseases you can prevent now. Preventable diseases like measles, mumps, and whooping cough. Is camp, childcare, or in-person school on your family's agenda? Give your child a healthy and safe summer and school year by making sure they're up to date on vaccinations and well child visits. You have the power to protect. Call your healthcare provider to find out what vaccinations your child is due for and make an appointment today. If you need help finding a provider, visit parenthelp123.org or call the Help Me Grow Washington hotline at 1-800-322-2588. An interpretation is available.
What kind of nonsense conversation are we having here?
The Neon Ghost Show. The Neon Ghost Show. Right here on Rainier what's it? Rainier Avenue Radio.world.
Right about now.
Rainier Avenue Radio.world. I'm so tired. I have to pee.
On Rainier Avenue Radio.world, look for the Change Your Food, Change Your Life show. I'm Dennis Weaver, your good food guide and host, helping you to feel good and look good, and who wouldn't want some of that? All that and more from the Change Your Food, Change Your Life show on Rainier Avenue Radio.world. Stories, songs, and guests. Begin living the organic good food life, and the rest of your life just may be the best of your life. Hose up, baby, to your health.
I'll take coronavirus for 100. Fever, chills, shortness of breath, loss of taste or smell. What is stay at home and isolate? Correct! Coronavirus for 200. Inability to stay awake, persistent pain or pressure in chest, trouble breathing. What is seek immediate help? Correct!
Coronavirus for 500.
Crippling and potentially dead infectious disease eliminated the United States with vaccination.
What is the polio vaccine?
Correct!
I'll take coronavirus for 700.
The Daily Double! Should I take the coronavirus vaccine? Wait. Hold up. This is not a game. It's time for serious discussions. We have coronavirus vaccines, but not everyone is comfortable taking them. Here's the facts. Based on what has been proven about vaccines for other diseases, COVID-19 vaccine may help keep you from getting seriously ill, even if you do get the virus. Getting vaccinated also may protect people around, particularly those at greater risk for severe illness from COVID-19. We don't yet have all of the answers. Get informed, talk to your healthcare physician, and make the right decision for you. This is a message supported by the Washington State Department of Health.
Women Empowerment Talk Radio, your roadmap to business success. Tune in every Sunday at 3 p.m. on Rainier Avenue Radio.world, providing resources and sharing motivational experiences from the everyday entrepreneur. Tune in Women Empowerment Talk Radio every Sunday, 3 p.m. on Rainier Avenue Radio.world.
Avenue Radio. Welcome back to Rainier Avenue Radio.world. It's me, Tony B. Thank you for joining us. We do this broadcast every Friday from 1 o'clock to 3 o'clock, and
provide you with information about the impacts of the coronavirus on South Seattle and surrounding communities. If you missed earlier, we had the opportunity to talk to a group of folks, including Dr. Dwayne Chappelle, Dr. Andrew Speck, I believe, and Francisco, all working with Seattle Promise. Seattle Promise, again, the opportunity for students who attend Seattle public schools to get free tuition to 3 colleges: North Seattle, Central, and South Seattle colleges, along with other assistance as well, help with books. So definitely check out Seattle Promise and find out more information about that. And apparently during the pandemic, outreach was effective, and one of the largest classes took advantage of this opportunity. Then we had a chance to speak also with Luana Arai and talk about Seattle Relief, which is between $1,000 to $3,000 for every low-income person. That is COVID relief money. And so, again, the same deal. Take advantage of that. I've been telling you also that we're going to be talking to Benton Hines. I've described this conversation as, how we get down on this show, one white man's journey from privilege to anti-racist and abolitionist work. And I want to welcome to the program Mr. Benton Hines. Benton, how are you?
Hi, Tony B. It's great to see you again and reconnect.
Great to talk to you too. And I know it's Ben for short, but man, I have a connection to the name Benton. So
yeah, that's right.
Ben, first of all, thank you for coming on and sharing with us your journey, and we're going to find out about that work as well. But I think it would be interesting to tell folks how we met. Just quickly.
Okay, quickly. I crashed into Tony B's car one hot or warm sunny morning, and that's how we met.
Obviously, things turned out okay.
I'd say that was mostly because of you and how you met me when you came out of your house on your way to work and woke up to the world, and your whole driver's side door window mirror was smashed, and I was in your front yard. And the way you met me, you said, "Oh man," and then you just sort of accepted everything, including me cleaning up your car, which was the least I could do. So yeah, I've always felt a connection with you, just and grateful to you for that.
You're doing anti-racist abolitionist work.
Yes.
Let's go back a little further, just kind of at the beginning, before you started doing this work, and where were you at? Because we obviously hear stories about people during the pandemic, and again the social upheaval and social unrest, and again for a lot of people an awakening because of the pandemic and the George Floyd murder, and things that have taken place then. But for you, it was before that.
It was before that. It was 2 years before I met you. And, I had started doing a lot of internal work, and then initiated some white conversations for white and mixed race people in a meditation center that I was a member and a leader of. So I'd been doing a year and a half or so about that with them. It was all too fresh and new for me. So that was my beginning, 2016 really. And then I met you, and then the work has continued and intensified for me in ways that I deeply appreciate.
How I don't want to describe whether you had an epiphany or a change, but
Mhm.
Who were you before this? What is different now than back then? The word that you used was privilege.
Surely, yes, right. So what changed or what happened? Um, there was a moment in 2016 uh, where I had an experience that showed me the kind of life I had lived as a now, older white male, and able to look back over 60, 70 years. I was shown something, and what I was shown is what you would know very well: white privilege, white, the cocoon that a white person like me lived within all those years. I began to realize I had missed something major, and I had losses that I was dimly aware of, emotional and spiritual losses, with this moment in late 2016. So I was still in that moment, really, when I met you after I smashed your car.
What were the things that came together, or was it one specific thing again that made you go, huh? What?
Yeah. What's the well? There's a whole life lived in a state of white. I call it blind and numb. To the realities of people of all different heritages, of all different skin colors. The encounter I had was so sharp and vivid in Technicolor, and I saw the inherent racism in my mind. It was there, and I couldn't ignore it. And to choose to ignore it would have meant that I would need to die in some way and become even more numb. Or the choice was go into this, what happened in this moment, my shame, my embarrassment, see and meet it and see what it was about, and without knowing what would ever happen. So it was a long winter, and then in spring 2017, because of my position in my local meditation center, I had an appointment. I was a teacher. I had latitude to start conversations on race, and so my first conversation was evenings. It was 10 week. It was mainly white people, some mixed race people. And so that's, from that long winter of who in the hell am I if I've ignored this all my life? And then questioning whether I should even start such a conversation, because who am I to do that? So I did. And I'm much better for it. And that leads me from then to you now. I haven't really stepped aside from that path since I woke up to what I missed all my life.
Well, Benton, we know that you know all your life. I hope we still have him. I think we had a loss of internet there, and so we'll see if we can't get Benton back on. You're listening to Rainier Avenue Radio.world. This is me, Tony B, and our special impacts of the coronavirus on South Seattle and surrounding communities. We're talking to Benton Hines, and again, this is entitled One White Man's Journey from Privilege to Anti-Racist and Abolitionist Work. And Benton was sharing the story of where he was at before he had a realization that there, in his decades of life on this earth, there were things that he just didn't know, didn't have to be aware of, didn't have to be accountable for. And then suddenly, again, the confluence of things that occurred opened his eyes. And I definitely want to talk about his anti-racist work and abolitionist work. And again, whether you agree or disagree is not, what I'm here. I'm here because one person is sharing their story, and either way, I think you'll find it interesting, and hopefully we will be able to get him back. We were having some internet concerns. If you are just tuning in or you've been listening to this, we earlier had the opportunity to speak about Seattle Promise, and we talked with Dr. Dwayne Chappelle about Seattle Promise and the opportunity for students who are juniors in high school to begin the application process to get free tuition to college. Yes, free tuition to college. These three colleges, community colleges, North Seattle, South Seattle, and Central Seattle, community colleges. There's money available for transportation. There's money available for books and other things that you may need. I think there's even potentially housing assistance that may be available depending on your circumstances. And then we, again, Seattle's Promise. It's for all students of Seattle Public Schools the opportunity to attend one of these three community colleges for absolutely free. You'll get scholarship. And then we talk with Luana Hall about Seattle Relief, COVID money, $16 million that is available for you if you meet the income eligibility requirements. I think it was for a family of one, around $3,300 a month. For a family of four, I think it was $4,500 a month, somewhere in there. And they have a chart that you can actually go check and find out your eligibility. And this extends all the way until November 15th. You have the opportunity to apply and find out your eligibility. So you can go back and watch that show as well. I'll tell you what, we're going to take a quick break here, and we'll see if we can resolve technical issues and get Benton back on till the other half of his story. We'll be back right after this.
This is Paul Pearson, host of Star Time. And when I'm not trying out new wigs and cocktail dresses, I'm listening to Rainier Avenue Radio.world.
High school football is back, but guess what? We need more referees. There's a constant need for qualified individuals to work our high school football game. Please consider becoming a football official. Go to pnfoa.com to sign up today. That's pnfoa.com to sign up today. This is a message brought to you by Rainier Avenue Radio.world, your home for Metro High School football.
Rainier Avenue Radio, your community radio station.
This is Cindy Bright, the host of Heartbeat Radio.
This is Paul Pearson, host of Star Time.
This is Paul Schneiderman today on the 73rd edition.
Hey, y'all, welcome to Travelers Guide to Venus and Mars, Princess Robin. Richard Fairy Godmothers. You guys know me.
Your home for information about the impact of the coronavirus.
Amongst many things that's difficult about this virus is that it's
devastating. They're really heartbreaking stories of people who have.
There isn't anyone that isn't impacted.
Shutting our schools down, including all athletic programs.
Your first-hand accounts.
We got here to test, and I found out that I was positive.
A lot of people who know me, I'm still the first person they know.
But it was almost like you were patient zero for South Seattle. Your stories of community coming together.
Partner very heavily with Tacoma Urban League, who is doing some amazing work in response.
We're doing things for small businesses. We're giving out loans to small businesses.
And so I think it's very important that we have leaders who feel protected.
I mean, I cannot tell you we're calling 20, 30, 40 minutes.
This crisis in our community, we've been working to address it.
Rainier Avenue Radio, broadcasting 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
DJ Dirty John.
Karen Z with Rainier Avenue Radio.
Hey, this is Sergio Cool. Rainier Avenue Radio.world.
Rainier Avenue Radio.world. We got you covered. Local impact, global press.
We broadcast welcome to Rainier Avenue Radio.world and our weekly coverage of the impact on communities. Continuation of our series. I'd like to thank everyone for joining us again here. And then again, now we are aware of the fact that we are and more And welcome to our live studio audience for another exciting edition of Did You Know? And here we go with round one. Did you know?
COVID vaccine is free and easy to get. You don't need insurance or an appointment to get your vaccine. Vaccines are available at many locations near you.
And now we're going to double the value. Did you know?
The COVID-19 vaccine is always free of cost. You can visit pharmacies, community health centers, and other health providers in your neighborhood.
And now for the lightning round. Did you know?
The Delta variant of COVID is a mutation that has health experts worried because it's twice as contagious.
Then for our finale. Did you know?
The best way to protect yourself from the COVID Delta variant is to get fully vaccinated. Get your vaccine today.
Find out more at kingcounty.gov/vaccine.
Did
you know?
This is Paul Pearson, host of Star Time. And when I'm not shouting "Badia" at city council meetings, I'm listening to Rainier Avenue Radio.world.
Welcome back to Rainier Avenue Radio.world. It's me, Tony B. This is our special impacts of the coronavirus on South Seattle and surrounding community show. We were talking to Benton Hines, and he was explaining his journey, again, as titled One White Man's Journey from Privilege to Anti-Racist and Abolitionist Work. We were having some technical difficulties, and it doesn't look like we're going to be able to get connected again. So we're just going to run this back and do it next week. And again, I think it's one man's journey. It's a story wherever you are on the whole coronavirus issue, on the civil unrest and social upheaval that took place over the past summer 2020 with George Floyd. For some folks, it was an awakening. We were listening to Benton Hines' story, and he was sharing with us that he'd managed to live decades, his whole life, and not see some things. And so we're going to just do this next week so that you can hear again the story in its entirety and to how he got into anti-racist abolitionist work, what led him to the decision to make that happen, and what that work is right now, and why he's committed. In his words, he had to make a change from where he was. That's not always the case. Oftentimes there are people who are still in that fog and don't even realize it, despite the fact that there was clearly disparities that were exposed by the pandemic. And then, of course, added on to that was the 9 minutes and 26 seconds murder of George Floyd. Benton is back. We've got him here, and Benton, I'm going to bring you back on. But what I decided to do, if you're agreeable to that, because I wanted people to really hear your story, and we've only got a couple of minutes now, so we'll just reschedule this for next week, next Friday, and we'll find a time slot that works for you, so that you can relax. It's probably not fun doing an interview when your equipment's not working and you're getting kicked out and things are going on. And I want you to be comfortable and relaxed and share your story. So how about we reschedule for next Friday?
That's really great. I really appreciate your patience, and I really look forward to seeing you again.
Likewise, Benton. Thanks for getting back on. Only for me to tell you, well, you can go back to whatever you were doing beforehand. We'll talk and we'll schedule some time again for next. Well, since you're here, you may as well stay on for my close.
Very good. Yes, I would like that.
So again, you're listening to Rainier Avenue Radio.world. It's me, Tony B. Our special impacts of the coronavirus on South Seattle and surrounding communities. If you are again tuning in, Benton's going to be back next week to talk about, again, one white man's journey from privilege to anti-racist and abolitionist work. Earlier in the show, we had folks here from Seattle Promise talking with you about what you can do to ensure that your Seattle Public School high school student gets a college education for free. That's what Seattle Promise is. Started in 2018, and I was curious through the pandemic how things had worked out, and they actually got an increase in their class size. I think it was 800 plus in the last class size that took advantage of this opportunity to get, again, free education at North Seattle, South Seattle, and Central Seattle community colleges. Also, there's the opportunity to get a number of other things like your books, your transportation. And here's the deal. If you live outside of Seattle, because I'm saying this is eligible for Seattle Public School students for Seattle. If you live outside of Seattle, but you have a student that goes to a Seattle public school, you're still eligible. All right. And then we again spoke about Seattle Relief, which is anywhere from $1,000 to $3,000, $16 million available for families that are low income that have been impacted by COVID, which if you don't think you're eligible, I guarantee you've been impacted by COVID. So I'm talking with you if you fall into that category of as a single person making around $3,300 a month or less, or a family of four making, I think it's around $4,500 a month or less, you are eligible for this relief. Could be $1,000, could be $3,000, could be for multiple folks in a household. If it's family, depends on how you file your taxes. So I don't want to get real wonky here, but that's what it is. Don't forget that tomorrow we'll be broadcasting the Seattle Prep Roosevelt a loser out game before we move into the next round of the playoffs. And that's 3 o'clock tomorrow, Saturday, continuing our high school sports broadcast. And on Sunday, we've got special programming for you that will be breaking news. There has been an uptick in UFOs in the Northwest. And on Sunday at 7 o'clock, tune in to Rainier Avenue Radio for breaking news about the recent sightings, which suggest UFO activity is spiking in the Northwest. 7 o'clock on Sunday, we're going to hit you with some breaking news about this activity. Make sure you tune in. All right. 7 o'clock. All right, Ben. Thanks for hanging in there with me.
And you with me. I look forward to seeing you next week.
All right, we'll have this
Appreciate your patience.
Next week. That's it. That's all the time I have. That's going to do it for the kid. It's me, Tony B. Stay tuned on our audio formats for more on the impacts of the coronavirus on South Seattle. And whether you believe you can or whether you believe you cannot, you're probably right. I'm out. Peace.